So finally, as we start to wrap up our information on Karl Marx, we need to talk about the concept of what happens when the revolution takes place. What is it that Marx would want to see society develop or evolve as? And this word utopia is often sort of thrown around with regard to the work of Marx. You'll often hear people talking about the end result of all of this social upheaval being what Marx would term a communist utopia. And while Marx certainly got the wheels rolling with regard to the development of communist societies, what Marx viewed as happening or potentially happening with these revolutions was not at all how communism played itself out in the world. So Marx would have advocated for the development of a scientific socialist society. He said that we needed to have, as groups of people, an awareness of class struggle and an awareness of the antagonisms of contemporary society. And we talked about this earlier with the concepts of alienation and false consciousness. He said that if we had this awareness of struggles and this awareness of opposition, that we would want to advance society with regard to revolution, with regard to overthrowing what wasn't working and creating something new. And I think this is where the concept of utopia most of the time comes into play with Marx. He, however, thought of his type of society as being based on rational thought and empiricism. And it is a little bit of a criticism here with regard to Marx. Many of the ideas he had, most of the ideas that he had, were not backed up with scientific experiments. They weren't clear enough for us to be able to measure. They were purely theoretical in that sense. However, he did say that once we started to have this awareness of this antagonism that existed in society between the haves and the have-nots, that scientific socialist society would be a necessary outcome to the problems of capitalism. So again, here we hear that common thread of snap out of it, you're living in a state of false consciousness, and you need to develop a true sense of where you are, a class consciousness, in order to change society for the better. Now, to simplify Marx's notions of a scientific socialism, it would take hours to really have a fully developed discussion about it. But in a nutshell, and I hesitate to do this, but in a nutshell, Marx would have asserted that at some point we would have that bloody revolution, and that revolution would be necessary for us to come out the other side. And what he envisioned there was a sort of skeleton government or a group restoring order to society, and that once order was restored, we would be able to, through the process of rational thought, we would be able to self-regulate. And again, we see sort of that common understanding of what utopia is. He thought we would be able to live in a society that was just for all, and that would not need to have any sort of external regulation, that we would all be able to live together and understand what we needed to do in order for society to function smoothly. So you can truly see where the label of utopia would be attached to that. And his ideas about utopia were not really fresh and new. There had been ideas about utopian society and utopian socialism well before him, all the way back to the philosophical work of Plato. And so while we oftentimes associate a lot of the problems that came along with regard to communism to Karl Marx, it really does behoove us to try and understand his work a little bit more deeply than that. All right, so I hope this helps you to understand the concept of utopia and scientific socialism. Take care.